Hello and good morning to our podcast, and we have Mr. Abhishek Ranjan with us. So, Mr. Abhishek Ranjan is a global head of ESG at Brillio, a Bain Capital company. He is responsible for leading Brillio's sustainability program and associated through leadership and communication on a global scale. Hello, Mr. Ranjan. How do you feel on this podcast?
Yeah, I feel excited and maybe nervous a bit.
Is this your first podcast or?
No, I did a lot of podcasts and I do it myself sometime as well. But every time it's a new experience.
Yes. So, Mr. Ranjan, what is your work profile like? What kind of things that you do in your work?
I think, my passion is my profession at this point of time. So my days, thinking about how we can help more and more children, bring the smiles to them. How can I make my employees more happier, connected? How do I bring more diversity and inclusivity at workplace? How should we take care of employees' health and safety? And how do we do better in terms of our carbon footprint and reduce our environmental, carbon footprint? So the whole day is all about thinking about people, win the company, outside the company, the youth, the new generation, as well as what we can do for the environment. It doesn't sound very exciting?
It does, sir. It does. It's a very creative job.
So, but how did it all start? Because that is something that our listeners would be really interested to know. I mean, from your work profile and anyone who follows Sir on LinkedIn, he has over 20k followers. So that is very interesting. And we went to your profile and we saw you were working at IBM, and from there now you're managing ESG program at Brillio. How did that journey pan out?
Yeah, so I come from a tier 2 city, right? And for us, like, getting a job was the biggest goal of the life. And when I started my career way back in 2005, I wasn't sure that what kind of careers available, and there wasn't like sustainability term. I never heard of that term that one. Maybe non-profits and etc. But there were not too many. They were not exciting. But when we see today, right? I mean, when LinkedIn rated sustainability in the top 15 jobs, right, the most after sought job, that talks about how the whole shift has happened, right? When I was 17 years old, I joined Rotaract Club, and it's a Rotary's youth wing, right? I was the president of the club, the first founding president, and that's how the journey began. Till today, I'm still in a Rotary Club for the last 25 years. So that gives me the real exciting times and help me to kind of build this in career as well.
So, sir, how was IBM like, and how is this company different from IBM?
Why did you miss Oracle?
Yes, sir, your whole journey.
So yeah, I started with IBM, got a campus placement from IMT Ghaziabad in 2005. Worked there in marketing, moved to Oracle, again marketing. And my first 10 years of career was marketing, which is like helping company to grow, get leads, do brand, all of those, right? It just happened that CSR and sustainability was shaping up in the country, and my CEO saw my work outside the company, what I do for lake conservation to Rotaract and Rotary. I think then he said, hey, why don't you do something for Brillio? That's where this whole conversation started in 2014. 2015 started loving it, and I think marketing became the second love. And for 2 years there was a hurdle, a debate going inside to choose between marketing. My first love, my career started with that, and now a new avatar has come in my life. So I felt that sustainability was very exciting. It's new. It's all happening. It's budging. And you can make your mark faster than the crowded place of marketing. To be very honest, right? And large companies like IBM and Oracle, obviously you have fancy swanking buildings, more processes, but about this process also will actually slow down. A younger company and a startup will give you more agile. They're more agility. There will be more ownership. They'll have more. They're okay with you failing and taking risk and opportunities, right? and there are not too many layers to take decisions. So it's up to you as an individual. Both companies are great, but what I say, and I'll sum it up with this: whether you want to be a big fish in a ocean, or you want to be a relatively not big but even a mid-sized fish in a pond. So I will probably choose to be a mid-sized fish in a pond than going to an ocean.
One interesting thing that we came across when we were going through your profile is that you were the CSR person, you got the CSR person award in 2021 for Brillio Bringing Smiles. So any interesting stories that originated from that impact?
A lot of them, right? So, we meet, I have traveled across 15 states, met children across government schools. And there are so many memories, you sometimes they just meet them on maybe in a shopping place or a mall, and they say, hey, my son is was sponsored by Brillio. We met you, right? But one very very emotional experience I want to share. I think it was the early years of the whole Bringing Smiles. We invite children to our office very often. I mean, every second week they come to our Brillio offices to experience corporate life, experience technology, what's happening, innovation and all. And what we do is that we bring more volunteers, Brillio employees, who have studied in public school, government school. So there's a larger connect, and there's a more of inspiration and aspiration built by this, when they meet someone who studied in the same side of schools, right? And they spend like 3 to 4 hours. And one of these events in a very early stage, I saw, when they were leaving our office, there were tears in the eyes of those girl students and as well as the employees. So it's like the bonding, right? What you create, right? See, I mean, it's just that we met, we had a great time. They're really inspired and full of energy, but there's also emotion that will we meet again. Right. So that was like a moment, but then that gave us an idea to give a more sustainable way of volunteering, and it shouldn't be like you go to a orphanage or an old age home for one day, and when you leave from there, okay, have you thought about the emotion of those senior citizens staying in old age home or orphanage, right? What next? So I think that if you see those eyes looking for you, right? There's a tears, but there's a smiles, all around. I think those were the goosebump moments. Many of them I experienced in my CSR career.
Right. So we in college don't actually get to see this kind of stuff. We only get to learn about that you have to do sales, you have to do marketing, you have to do this, finance and all that. But how can I know that I am not made for this, but something even more, like doing this kind of work?
So I think giving back to the society is a very natural thing. It's a normal thing. Yeah. It's not something that to be celebrated. We all, we all live in societies, and what we got, everything is from society. Of course, our parents are also part of the society. The education system is a part of society. So I think giving back to the society should be a part. And I tell you, being a volunteer and giving back to the society is more joyous to and happy moment for you than actually to the beneficiary. And in the process, you will learn a lot. You'll also learn a lot, how to work. Let's say you're a marketeer, you'll understand how the communities, different. You even probably have not experienced, how different segments and the income groups work. So there's a lot of exposure happens through CSR. The sensitization we are talking about, empathy should be taught in MBA colleges, but then you learn empathy by doing these things. You don't really need to go to our theory classes, right? So I think it's a win-win. Doing good for society is a win-win for individual as well as organizations, right? So that's, if you look at that perspective, I think each one of us will be motivated. But nobody should be doing the same thing with others do. Maybe you are passionate about animals, their rights.
Yes.
She may be passionate about environment. I am passionate about, I can't see sufferings of the younger kids and the elder people. Right. So it depends, right? I mean, each one can choose their own path to serve the humanity.
of course, there are CSR initiatives that different companies have. But how do we pave that path with corporate? Because corporate requires us to have they have rigid targets, they have commitments, and they want everyone to meet up with that. So as students, as people who want to make an impact, how can we integrate that with corporate?
The corporate is an institution. Most of you and me are individuals. Now, institution has governance, processes, etc. Right? Both only can marry each other. I mean, not in literal sense, but only can happen when you understand and you build the trust.
Yes.
Right? India, I think there's a lot of mistrust between non-profit and the profit. Until unless if the profit world joins the non-profit and the non-profit world joins the profit, the bridge will be still wider, right? Why can't you help a non-profit build their HR systems, or help them create a website or a social media strategy, right? So when you work with them, you'll understand what's the pain they go through, what are challenges. See, for a non-profit, even their beneficiary is their customer. Here, your beneficiary in business is a customer, but that beneficiary pays you back. So, you understand how the sales and marketing works in different organizations. But until unless both the organization, individuals and the organization, or non-profit and corporate, come to a level where they can, have this agreement, sometimes it's become difficult. Because the corporates have a lot of processes, governance issues. You can't just work like an individual.
Right.
Because the reputation risk, the brand risk, etc. is very high for the companies. Right? You can, as an individual, we can repair our risk faster, right? I mean, individual brand. And people are generally okay with, individuals and smaller brand. More the bigger the brand, the damage will be much higher if you do something wrong. Right? That's how the world is. They're very, very cruel for the, larger brands. So they have to be more and more serious and risk averse about this. Yeah.
Yes, so the thing that you said about private collaborating with NGOs is very good. So I want to share a personal example. Recently I visited Himachal Pradesh, Haridwar. So we stayed in a dharamshala. So dharamshala was very good. It was very well maintained, but they didn't have a website. Also, they didn't accepted online payments. So my father proposed that we'll create a website for you and we'll give it to them.
That's amazing, right? Isn't it? So I think thanks for sharing these stories, right? I think in India, we say neki kar and darya mein dal, right? But मैं बोलता हूँ कि neki kar and social media पे डाल. See, because until unless you spread the goodness, the stories of goodness, like what you shared about it, right? I'm sure you also must be doing something in similar lines or different. But I think the stories has to be told.
Yes.
Why I'm here with you guys to talk about ESG or sustainability, not just that that it's helping me in any way, but I wanted to know that the future business leaders are responsible leaders, right? While they're making a business decision, they also should think about the society, environment at large, right? So that's the perspective. But I think your podcast series should bring up these stories of change, stories of impact, right? Stories of smiles, happiness, however you want to name it. Yeah.
When we talk about students working at universities, let them be MBA or BBA students, most of the time what happens is that there is this lacking of culture. Like this culture, that most of the times, students are very, like we discussed a few hours earlier, that people, they're like, okay, the real world is very different from the textbook world that we study in. And there is that lacking of culture. So when they go to corporate, they suddenly have this image in their mind, okay, I'm expected to be this way. And that's where somewhere they're not able to bring out their ideas. How can we imbibe that culture from, let's say, a very holistic level at institute and university levels?
Yeah, so I think couple of very practical examples I shared, right? I mean, of course, summer internship is a one way where you get some exposure before you join a company, right? And a formal job. there are live projects, or there are short-term projects. You engage with, for your immersion programs, could be social or any other immersion programs, right? And having that's very important, which I really miss, in the Indian academic, system. In the US and the other countries, you'll see the most of the innovations, research, strategy, whether it's a business or a technology or elsewhere, is actually done out of the universities. The company also invests, the corporations invest in primary research, investing in, those innovation ideas, right? Right. I think that, is still a very far distant in India. Until unless academia needs corporates. Corporate needs academia as well, right? Right. So we need to be, we need to keep, this is a very sustainable learning process. So getting, one is that, you can't say that only the thirsty person should go to the well. The well can also move.
Yes.
We have technologies now to move earth. Move houses, not earth.
Yes.
Yes. So why not? The well can move, right? So I think it's both ways. And, as I said, that the conventional, you can add volunteering, have more faculties from the industry,
Right.
who are, especially the area which are newer, where not too many textbooks and not too many things are still, it's getting proven. And especially ESG and sustainability is completely a new ball game. And the growth is 10x. What you hear yesterday, by next week there will be many things getting added to it, right? So I think that connect will help you as well, right? Talk to, I just said talk about, in today's session I talked about mentors.
Right. Mentors.
Have a corporate mentors, right? Figure out, reach out to 10 people. And there are people who got funding, millions of funding through LinkedIn, right? Watch out the companies you want to work for. Watch out the people who inspire you on LinkedIn. Follow them, participate, right? So you have those platforms to be more, get to the sneak peek view of the corporate life. And that will help probably, yeah.
Sir, you're also a faculty member for various prestigious universities. What are some of the lessons that you would try to imbibe in those students, especially coming from a CSR and ESG background?
So let me start with my first teaching experience with Nasimonji in Bangalore. So there was a very funny incident happened, so I want to share that.
Yes, sir.
So I was very nervous, right, because teaching in to let's say 60 of students in a class, and all mature, young adults, very difficult to sometimes how to kind of maintain the decorum, right? So I spoke to a known person who was a dean of another college or university, and he said, when you go for your first class, you should have a rule of 10 and display in the presentation and in your slides, right? So, okay, nobody should talk on phone, nobody should use this, nobody should do this. If you had to go to washroom, you have to ask the faculty. All of this I put on the slide because I didn't have experience, and I think it's backfired to me. What happened that in the first day, I told, hey, nobody should come in the class beyond 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, otherwise you not get attendance. I was very strict. It just happened the next day I got delayed by 12 minutes. And you know what the students did? They actually locked the doors.
Oh my God.
I was ragged actually on the second day of my teaching, but and then and when I was taking the roll calls, one of the student, he said, "Sir, you are late." So that's how it is. So, but yeah, then I didn't like it. The class was not good, not very cooperative. I had to complain to the authorities. All this drama happened, but I tell you that was when I made friends with them over the next few months. I think I was very surprised at the last day of my class. The same guy who was in the first class told me that you are late, came and touched my feet. I was wow, this is unbelievable. so yeah, that was the experience, a very interesting experience I had. And now I think even in my sleep or dream, I can just teach because I have taught like 500 hours plus in the last 5 years, despite in a corporate role. So yeah, it's actually a very learning experience, very enriching experience. And whatever I write, comment, talk, I think all this masala's inputs come from students like you, because you would have asked this question or spoken some facts and figure. So you are my, wiki, or you are my knowledge powerhouse and all this information. So like my intelligence is all built because of your collective intelligence. So I think I really enjoy doing this, and maybe I'll pursue it post my corporate retirement.
So now coming to this, now you'd like to come around from the direction of teaching and education to more on ESG.
ESG.
Sorry. Yeah. So could you, for all our listeners, could you explain what ESG and sustainability is, and what is the scope for development ahead for it?
So, we all know that, development is something which is, quite essential for the humankind, right? Especially countries like India, which is a very aspirational country, right? We have, a lot of people have out of poverty, but then there are a lot of people are still not aspirational, right? They want to be in a middle class or upper middle class or higher income group. Now, all this aspiration is actually taking us to what? Is to a consumption-led society. There will be a lot of consumption. Look at the waiting cycle of cars in India. There are cars waiting cycle is more than 2 years now. A lot of them are like 6 months to a year plus, right? What it shows that that there is a lot of aspiration in this country. Now, any development, if it happens, it will have a effect on our climate and the whole carbon emissions what we're talking about, right? How do we balance growth and the green, right? That's a whole dialogue about, right? And more focus in countries like India, because the growth is the highest here. It's probably one of the highest in the world. And when you talk about this, millions of cars getting added, millions of houses getting built, people, air travel is in the peak. You travel in any of the airplane and it's like almost full nowadays, right?
Yes.
So I think that's where now what all this will also deteriorate the impact on the environmental concerns, right? And we saw that how it was before during the COVID time. People are talking that they cited from Punjab to Himachal and something like from Uttarakhand to our Himalayas and all. Now these are the serious issues, right? So the growth and the green has to go hand in hand, right? You have to make it balanced, and you should not grow at the cost of the future generations. So you have no rights to take any metal, any natural resources what our future generation should also have the same access like what given to us by our forefathers, right? So ESG is environmental social governance, right? E is all about climate change, water, forest conservation, etc. Right? So the three major impact is the water, waste and energy consumption. Then you have the S part, which is social. Social is all about how you take care of your own employee, which is employee health and safety, how much diversity inclusion you have, what kind of training programs you run for them, and then the people who may be affected or people who are part of your community, which is your society. Right. So this both forms the S part of it, and the governance is where how do you run the company. So there is how do you select your board members, what kind of composition, what kind of checks and balance, what kind of policies, what kind of audits, what kind of external assurance you have on different things. Do you have a whistleblower policy? Do you have an equal pay, equal opportunity policy? What you're doing for diversity? All of this of governance matter comes in the G, right? So today's world is not looking at your only in the financial performance, but also on your ESG performance. Yes. And most of the investment decisions has ESG plays a huge role. So if your investors, your customer, your consumers or your stakeholders are demanding a much more from the companies to be on ESG, right? That's how it is taking sheen. Some of you have also heard about people, planet, profit. It's the same as ESG, where E is your planet, people is your social, and governance is your profit. How do you make profit, right? So the last point is that CSR is about spending a percentage of your profit after you run the business the way you want it, right? But ESG is not about just taking 2% or some percent out of your profit, but how do you reach to that profit? What do you do to reach to the profit, right? The whole journey. That's how it is, right? It's a very, very inclusive way of looking growth of the companies.
Especially, I think since COVID happened, we saw a lot of these trends. Like because of COVID, people were going through a lot of problems, and then they realized that caring for the environment, caring for the people, everyone became very collaborative, right? So during that time, everyone was very collaborative. All the companies were helping out each other. So that is something I believe that is where it got a huge growth, especially in India as well. So what do you think would be the future for ESG in India? How much is it progressing at the moment, and what can we expect?
See, I think COVID, every one of us were very scared. But I think we say that every, good or bad thing, there is always a positive side, right? And the one positive side of the COVID was the Mother Earth actually took the measures to kind of, take care of the earth, right? And probably repair the whatever damages we have done so far, right? And we see that happening. See, if you look at ESG, I talked about the job opportunities, etc. All of us, if you flash back 2 decades back, there was a huge, I think you all were in schools and probably not knowing, but if you go back and read, the focus on quality, the quality standards, in technology companies, we have CMMI level 3, 4, 5 plus, right? So the quality was a big concern. Then the quality standards were created. There was a lot of companies were, they had selling a different product, but on packaging they are not giving the right consumer information, right? The classic case was the quality ice cream. It's not an ice cream; it's a frozen dessert, right?
Yes.
So a lot of these issues came, in those times, and but today if you look at quality is a stable stake. We just go with the brand. And we believe this brand, why we buy, one of the reasons because, for sure, it's a quality. Why do you buy a particular brand, clothing or eats, right, or go to a restaurant? So what quality was a decade or 2 decades back, the same thing is going to be in the ESG.
Right.
Where today ESG is not at the level of what the expectations are to kind of mitigate the climate change and limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, right? And more and more pressures will be there from each of the stakeholders, whether it's a government, agencies who are on the compliance side, investors, customer, your own employees, your future employees. I think all of us are very aware.
Right.
At this level, when I was in my undergrad, I don't think these terms will even exist or when we don't talk about it, right?
The internet has been a boon.
Boon for it, right? Yeah. So I think there will be, as I said, it will be going to be the new quality. What it was a decade or 2 decades back, and that is the kind of sheen, or that is the kind of focus of the will be given on ESG. So ESG is going to be, and look at the renewables in India, the EV cars. What are these? They are the there's examples. So the ESG is like for a company, but if you look at in general, the growth for a greener economy is going to be higher. Right, whether in the car sector, whether in your electricity, where people are talking about, you're talking hydrogen-led cars, right? So a lot of innovations will happen. So if you're really passionate about, doing something for community and environment, you will be also your own, as an employee, these companies will take you well, but you think about the impact what you will create. It's a long-lasting impact. And the ESG will give you a lot of satisfaction. If you're doing something, EV and, researching on it or creating something new, or if you're doing something on other area, I think the level of satisfaction what you get by doing this So that will increase, and we will need diverse people for ESG. We not need only the people with a finance or social development background or only environment, because generally people think ESG or sustainability means environment. No, environment is the one important pillar, but there are so many other pillars. So I think it's the way of how the company will run, and if that is the way how the company should run, then we will need a lot of business managers who are aligned to make that happen.
Yes, sir. So also, like you mentioned about ESG, so that is definitely, I think now it is becoming more like a lifestyle for people to adopting environmentally sustainable approaches, working for the people around them. That is becoming more like a community approach, even beyond corporate. People are incorporating it in their everyday life. So that is pretty interesting. Also, sir, like you mentioned a few hours ago when we were conversing about your associations with startups and how even Brillio began like that. And Manidev here, he has a very keen interest in becoming a venture capitalist someday. So he has some very interesting questions around that.
Yes, sir. So one of the questions that I was thinking about is, as a graduate, should I go and pursue a startup where I can learn more things, but I have very little things to experiment on in terms of what
Resources.
I mean is, yes, resources. Resources are very limited in a startup, but there are the growth aspect in startup is very much bigger than what in a big corporate I can learn. So to pursue a big company, or to pursue a startup, what is your thing?
So I think it's a very, very subjective question to an individual, right? There are individuals who have left Harvards and IITs to jump to the startup, and they didn't finish their degrees. There are bigger startups or who have become giants now, who have started in garage and with less money, and they don't even have undergraduate degree. So it's purely and the individual, what kind of risk appetite. I think I'm actually part of the Karnataka startup. I'm a jury of the startup funding which comes the Karnataka state government, and I'm sorry to say this, but ideas are cheap, right? It's all lies in how much of prototype and execution you bring to the. So how do you make the idea to give life to your idea, right? Until you give a life to idea, and it's just like what I say in a very again crude way, the daydreaming. Like, so I used to daydream one day I'll get 5 crore rupees. I will meet Amitabh Bachchan. Whenever I get 5 crore. So those are like childhood, teenage kind of things. Okay, itna paisa kama ke ye karenge pehla kaam. So I think startups are very organized. You don't have to really worry if you have an idea. You have incubators, you have accelerator programs, you have startup challenges even for engineering and management graduates, where you get some seed fund, very small amount, but it also gives you that that your idea has really been liked and on your prototype, actually, not just idea. So I think if you have a really good idea which you want to do, build a prototype, I think as early you can start is the best time. Where more and more you get into the grind of and more you want to spend time, the risk appetite become little slower. It's not that people at 60s and 70s have not started a company. They have. But most of the startups, if you see the age bracket will be very young, around plus minus 20s, right? So I think if you have a conviction that I have a vision, I have make the idea work, I can make it, I can add life to it, then I think you should plunge into it without much thinking, right? I have seen a lot of people who join corporate after they fail their startup. So today, when you write in your CV that my startup failed, and you're able to give reasoning that, I think nobody takes you this guy is. They actually add to your credibility. Right? Oh, this guy tried so much, so I think today's world is allowing people to fail, even if and more fail early. So they'll be saying that if you have to fail early in startup world, right? And with so much of today's the younger kids of 10 years, 11 years, they ask like, questions around that, what is ESOPs, what is, private equity, what is the, a lot of lingos what we use in startup world, right? So I think the Shark Tanks of the world, they've really made this at the very interesting, right? I mean, so that's where the world is. But if you have an idea and if you have a conviction, you have the right recipe to do it, go for it.
Like you mentioned, there are very incubator centers, right, where we can go up with the idea. But how do we cater that kind of idea at, especially like when we're as students, like as of now we're in 20s, we're in our college, and obviously we do not have that many sufficient financial resources as well, and that guidance as well. So how can incubators be a guide to us?
See, I think you can start with, so there's a lot of ideas contests happen. So, that will fetch you some prize money. I won't say investment. Right, and you can also validate with the case study competitions, etc., at your college level, right? So that is the one way. Obviously, you have to look at some angel investors. Sometimes it has to be in a closed network group, right? Accelerator and will help you to kind of accelerate if you have or nurture it, right? So there are the government accelerators. There are private bodies as well, right? And once you get into that, I think there's a lot of knowledge it's shared by the, already the investors and all of them, right? A lot of people are looking at early investment because if they make early investment, that the returns are much, much higher, right? So you'll find it. It's in every city, and there's a huge push by even the governments. You get a lot of loan facilities by SBI, Y, and all that. It is very discounted. You don't have to give like collaterals to get loans at many times. So I think there's a lot of ecosystem has already been built. Right. So you come to Bangalore, and there's an area called HSR, right? And every building is a startup, right? And if you like, Bangalore is already Silicon Valley, but within the Silicon Valley, there's an area called HSR, and you see they're like unicorns after unicorns, right? The largest number of unicorns comes from Bangalore, right? So I think if you're passionate, right, just go for it. I know you have studies, you'll have this, but even you have passionate about it, people have left IITs, I know Harvard's, right? So I mean that's where they are, right? So I think you will find a lot of such things happening in now than earlier. In our times, nobody used to have these. So just go for it. Get some findings in terms of what challenges, competitions you can participate. Get some initial somebody vetting your ideas, right? And then slowly you build upon that with accelerator and other programs. Yeah.
So much, sir, for letting us do this podcast.
Yes, sir. So finally, I have just one last question for our audience. Do you have any interesting startup story? Any story that came up to you, maybe of your students, maybe, or some of your own story, some story that we could end this on?
There are a lot of stories around startups, right? So, see, you do startups outside some people are working, but they're outside. But you have also opportunity to do startups within your organization, right? I think I had that opportunity in my own company. So we never had the sustainability, CSR, all of this existing, right? So the first brick to the now we have a maybe 1 BHK house, I would say. I won't say that it's bigger. So, there's all of this building blocks. It requires the same entrepreneurial zeal, the founder's mindset. Because what is the founder mindset? The founder mindset is whatever it takes, we have to make it done, right? But if you're a worker mindset, then you have a very different way of thinking, right? So that's where. So sometimes this whole one is the entrepreneur, but then we have intrapreneur, which is like within organization also you can demonstrate, right? So that was a moment when I was told to build this, and I had no precedence. I have no idea because probably I would have heard a few times before that CSR term. So I think doing that itself was on a for me was in a moment, aha moment in terms of building of my own entrepreneurial journey, right? And very, very, the way we work also is a very entrepreneurial. People have a lot of freedom to choose, to try, fail, build their own, and the ownership, right? So if I am the heading a function or department, I have to take the ownership of it. And ownership is different than being a manager. That's the difference of the founder mindset, which comes from the for anything you do in the startup culture. Yeah. So that was my personal thing, which I am really excited and passionate. And till today, even 7-8 years, say you as somebody was always saying that we are very passionate about studying commerce.
Right.
When you do your own thing, which is really passionate, you never get tired of it.
Yes.
Right? So yesterday night I had just 2 hours sleep because I had to travel. And if I'm passionate to talk to students, I'm not tired. But sometimes if I'm not doing anything and sitting at home, I'll be like I'll be more lazy about it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's where the energy comes from, your passion. Yeah. So if the passion gets merged to a profession, I think nothing can be better than that.
So it was a very, very insightful session, and in fact we would like to tell everyone here in the audience that Sir has not only taken this moment to have this podcast with us, but he also spent, I guess, around 2 to 3 hours speaking to us personally. He talked to us about a lot of interesting things, which obviously because of the constraint of time we were not able to cover. But Sir's initiative of coming here talking to us has been very incredible, and we really appreciate that, Sir. Everyone who's interested having any questions on anything, you can always contact Sir. Sir is available on his LinkedIn. Like he mentioned, at any point of time you have any ideas, anything that you want to discuss, you want to connect, he's always there. So thank you so much, Sir. That was a great initiative. Thank you so much for talking to us, and it was a lovely session.
How did I do with the impromptu questions? Because you guys not shared this question before. So it was like an exam for me as well. So but I really enjoyed talking to you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sir. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. We are tuning out. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.